And we talked about how Unity is a component-based engine, and if you go to the inspector, you can see these little checkboxes, right? So if you uncheck this one right here, it disables that object. So you can see that the cube object is grayed out; it's not active. It doesn't mean that it's not in the scene. It's just not active, so you cannot see it, and it does not do anything when the game starts running. All right, let's run the game, and the state. If we check the state machine on the cube, it's disabled. It's not in any state. There's nothing going on with the cube. The game is still running. Well, how do we know? Well, if we click on the floor, we still have that new color transition, new color function there. But here's another thing we can do. We can, let me just turn it back on. Well, stop the game. Another thing we can do is we can disable the floor object. And now all of a sudden there's nothing in the scene that we can see, even though they're there, but they're disabled. Right. Okay, so you can disable and enable, activate and deactivate objects. What you can also do is you can disable and enable components on an object. So let's see, I have the cube and it's active, but I don't want it to do anything. I don't actually want it to, I don't want it to rotate and move and stop like what we had it doing before. I just want to experiment with not having that feature in the game. So instead of removing the Playmaker component, which will remove everything that I've done here, which also means I can't go back to this. If I change my mind, we can simply just disable that. Now, it's still got the component, but the component is not active, so it will not do anything with it. So if we hit play, you can see that the game is running. This Playmaker component is disabled, which is also stated here. How do we know the game is running? Well, if we try this again, click. Now, changes color. So the game is running, but there's nothing on this. The cube is not having any behavior. Now, what we can do is we can activate it during runtime, right? So we've talked about when the game is playing, it's running at runtime. We can activate this, and all of a sudden, it's doing its thing. It's starting to go through the different states, right? Because this Playmaker finite state machine is running. This component is active. Now, one thing you need to pay attention to there, however, is any changes you make in the game during runtime, meaning when the game is running and then you make different changes to the game. When you stop the game, the changes will not apply. So none of the changes that we've done during runtime is going to remain in the game. So that's to prevent you from making mistakes that you don't actually prevent you from making changes that you don't actually want to make in the game. So notice, let me just demonstrate that again. Start the game. Right. So this is, we have this component disabled, so it's not doing anything. Let's enable it, and then stop the game. Notice how this is reverted back to a disabled state or a disabled component. But if we if we activate this component, play, and then stop, it's still activated because we made the changes when the game is not running. So make sure any changes you want to make, you make them when the game is not running. But when the game is running, it's great to have the ability to experiment with different things, just for testing purposes, for prototyping purposes, right? So that's disabling and activating different components to different objects. Okay, the next thing I want to do is I want to have a little bit of sound. Now, how do we do that? Actually, let's do that in the next video.